Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Mesechet Avodah Zarah, and we are on top of Daf Samich Vav Amud Aleph, the Machloket Abaya and Rava that we started. Today's Amud is being learned L'schut Refuah Shelema of Rachel Simcha Bad Nahid, that should have full recovery. Refuah Shelema, Amen. We spoke about the Mishnah in the Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph that really discusses the concept of min bemino and min b'she'eno mino. In a nutshell, a quick review of it would be that if something gets mixed with a with something that's not considered the same type, leave it vague as that, because that becomes machloket Rava and Abaye, then it's benoten tam. It's kind of easier because as long as it's not affecting the taste, it will be mutar. You want to call it 1 in 60. However you slice that, it will become mutar benoten tam. But if something is mixed bemino with its own kind, then it would be asur b'mashu. Even a little mixture would render the entire thing asur. And we started studying about the fact that there is machloket Rava and Abaye, how do you categorize its type or not its type? Is it after what's called with the name, or is it after the taste? So we studied that Abaye holds that you go after the taste, and Rava holds you go after the name. And we gave an example. Now the Gemara is going to give the opposite example of this as well. Says the Gemara, Tanan, Yayin Nesech. This is 8 lines down from the top of the Amud. Yayin Nesech, says the Gemara, Shenafal al Gabe Anavim. If you have Yayin Nesech that falls on top of grapes, Yadichan vehen mutarot, we learned in the Mishnah that you could wash them and they would be mutar. Ve'im hayu mevukaot asurot, and if they were cracked, if they have openings that the yayin nesech could actually penetrate inside, then it would be asur. That's the rest of the Mishnah. That's not brought over here in the Gemara. Says the Gemara, kasal kadatach. We are assuming as of right now, for the discussion's sake, that we are talking about a yayin which is fresh, a wine that you just took out of the press and still kind of tastes like grape juice. It's a fermenting grape juice, fresh, squeezed, in the process of becoming wine. That's fresh wine, chamra chadata. So what's special about chamra chadata is that it shares the same taste with grapes. So for discussion's sake, we're going to assume that we're talking about that type of wine. You will see soon that the Gemara is going to reverse that and says, who says we're talking about fresh wine? For all intents and purposes, we may be talking about old wine, a regular wine that has been already fermented and developed and does not taste like grapes. But for now, the Gemara discusses, assuming that we're talking about fresh wine that is very grapey in its taste. So says the Gemara, that fresh wine was poured inside or on anavim, on grapes. My love benoten tam. Why wouldn't it be a benoten tam? And Mara says, no, b'mashu. It's mashu. Even a little bit would be asur. Because, well, it's the same taste. So according to Abaye, that we follow the taste, it should come out what? That even a little bit wine that gets mixed, if your grapes are even a little cracked, and a little wine gets in, the whole thing is asur. So Gemara says, well, it has to be benoten tam. So you see, not like Abaye. Gemara says, who says? Maybe according to Abaye, even a little bit of wine penetrating in makes the whole thing asur. So says Gemara, no, I'm not just shooting from the hip. I have a proof that this is benoten tam, and it's not b'mashehu, because Hamid Katani Seifa. Take a quick look at the Seifa of the Mishnah. The Seifa of the Mishnah states, Ze haklal. This is the rule of thumb. Kol shebehanauto benoten tam. Anything that when you want to benefit from it has noten tam, has given some taste in there, is asur. Kol she'en behanato benoten tam. If it's not benoten tam, it's mutar. So you see, the Mishnah itself says that we're talking about noten tam. So according to Abaye, now it becomes a big problem. Because according to Abaye, if you have fresh wine, which tastes like grape, when that wine gets mixed with your grapes, the yain nesach gets mixed with your grape, what should be the halacha? Asur b'mashehu. Even because remember, Abaye holds min b'mino is b'mashehu, and mino means taste. So if you have fresh wine that tastes similar to grapes, and a little bit of yain nesach gets mixed with the grapes, you're done. So from the Mishnah, says the Gemara, from Mishnah you see not like Abaye. We want to disprove Abaye. The Gemara says, well, the Mishnah tells you that it's benoten tam when they get mixed. According to Abaye, it's not benoten tam, it's even a mashu, because they already taste the same when it's talking about fresh wine. And the Mishnah doesn't specify what type of wine, right? So must be covers everything. Mara says no. Michlad benoten tam askinan, ve'Abaye matnitin bechamra atika be'invi. Abaye says no, I'm not bound to saying that every type of wine is covered in the Mishnah. Abaye establishes an okimta in the Mishnah that we're talking about regular, developed, old-aged wine that does not taste anything like grapes, and therefore, when you mix some of the wine with the grape, even if the grapes have cracks and the wine actually penetrated in, it will be what? Benoten tam, because we go after the taste according to Abaye. So therefore, we can't disprove Abaye from the Mishnah. Now the Gemara discusses, what if chala de chamra v'chala de shichra? You have vinegar, and vinegar back in the day was, from wine that went basically sour, either wine, grape wine, or it could be even chala de shichra, the grain-based vinegar that we have nowadays as well, right? So if you have grain-based vinegar and you have chala de chamra, wine-based vinegar, they're both called chala. They're both called vinegar. No one really specifies, even nowadays, like, you have vinegar, and then you see on the bottom if it's from wheat, if it's from grapes. You'll figure it out after when you look in the ingredients. But it's called vinegar. In the time of Chazal also it was called vinegar. Now you could have wine-based vinegar, chala de chamra, you have chala de shichra. So now what if they get mixed together? Right? Do you go after the name? Or do you go after the taste? Of course they taste different. One of them is wine-based. The other one is grain-based. They taste different. So here will be the opposite of the previous case. Or you could have chamira de chiti ve chamira de sari. You could have a sourdough made out of barley, a sourdough made out of wheat. They taste different, but they're both called chamira, right? They're both called sourdough. You want to look at the ingredients, chazaku baruch, but the name is the same. So it says the Gemara, Abaye Omar benoten tam. Abaye, of course, as expected, follows what? The taste. Rava, as expected, is going to follow the name. So it's going to result in the exact opposite what we had before. Rava, because he follows the name, is going to tell us that this is going to be considered min b'mino, and min b'mino is b'mashehu. even a little mixture, the whole thing is asur. And Abaye, who holds we follow the name, the taste rather, he's going to say, well, the taste of these two vinegars or these two sourdoughs are very different. So therefore, it's going to be benoten tam, not b'mashu. He's going to end up being much more lenient than Rava in this case. So says the Gemara, Rava amar b'mashu, Abaya amar benoten tam. Why? So Abaya amar benoten tam, but tamas dinan by tamalachud by tamalachud. We go after taste, and each one of them has its own taste, very distinct, very separate. And therefore, havaleh min b'sheinu mino is considered min b'sheinu mino. It's one kind with a different kind, and every min b'sheinu mino is benoten tam. That's Abaye. Rava amar b'mashu. Rava, who holds even a little bit of mixture over here, is going to answer up. Is going to prohibit the whole thing, because Rava holds we go after Shema, we go after the name. Batar Shema Azlinan ve'hai chala mikri. This is called vinegar, and hai chala mikri. The other one also is called vinegar. Nobody calls them differently. They're called vinegar, and therefore it's going to be min b'mino. Same with sourdough. Hai chamira mikri. Hai chamira mikri. Both of them are called chamira, but both of them are called sourdough, and therefore havaleh min b'mino. It's considered its own type, its own min, v'chol min b'mino, b'mashu. Every time that you have min b'mino, as we discussed already in the Mishnah in Ayin Gimel, is going to be b'mashu, hence the reverse of the case that we had before, because it all follows whether or not it is its type, or if it's not its type. And that would be the determining factor.
Can we say that because we don't want this other taste to mix with this other taste, like you don't like the taste of this vinegar, and you could say it's not to its benefit. So if wine vinegar mixes with rice vinegar, you say, I don't like it.
So we spoke about this, correct. In other words, if you have something that is noten tam le, not the shevach, right? It's noten tam le pegam, what we call. And then of course would be different, because even though that you have a taste, it ruins the taste, doesn't elevate the taste, so then it will be Meikar Adin, less of a problem. In many cases it will be completely mutar. So says the Gemara, Amar Abaye minaminullah. How do I know that we follow the taste? How do you know? It's called the same thing. When we have min b'mino in the Mishnah in Daf Ayin Gimel, it just talks about wine and water, water and water, water, wine and wine. It does not specify tam versus name. So how do I know, says Abaye, that when you have a discrepancy between name and taste, which is our case, they're both called the same thing, but they taste different, right? Or they taste the same thing, but they're called different things. When you have of course, it would be if they call different things and they taste different, then it's straightforward. That's the case in Mishnah. But when you have a discrepancy between name and taste, that means you have two things that are called exactly the same thing. They're both called vinegar, but they taste completely different. Or two things are called the same thing, but they taste completely different, right? Or taste the same thing or call different things. How do I know which one I follow? Do I go after taste? Do I go after name? Rava says we go after the name, because it's not the same min. Min is what we call him. Abaye says, no, we go after the taste. How do I know? Says Abaye, I prove it to you. The Tanya, because it's a Braita. The Braita says the following. This Braita is talking about orla and spices. When you have spices that are asur, and you mixed them with food, and they are enough to spice the food in a way that the food now is properly spiced. But you didn't have enough of every type of spice. You had a mixture of bunch of spices together, and you want to know if each one of them is not enough, but the combination thereof gives the proper taste and spice to the food. If they are combined, are they mistaref? Are they halachically added up together to say, oh, it's asur? Because even though that this pepper didn't have enough and it will be batel. And that pepper didn't have enough by itself and will be batel. And the other pepper didn't have enough by itself and will be batel. But the subtotal of all of them together made this food very pleasant, and therefore they should be mistaref. They should be combined halachically in the halachic eye, and we should say that is asur. So that's the discussion of this braita. The Tanya, Tavlin bet v'gimel shemot. If you have spices that there are 2 or 3 different names, vehen min echad, but they are the same type. For instance, you have white pepper, green pepper, long pepper. All those are peppers. But based on how they look, we call them different things. So they have different names, but they're really the same type of tavlin, of a spice. Or they have gimel minim. You have 3 different types with 3 different names. Asurin umistarfim. They are asur, and they are combined in the halachic eye, and we would asur up, we would prohibit the food based on this. Now, here is the kunz. Ve'amar Chizkiah. Chizkiah says, Hacha b'minei metika askinan. Meaning, the obvious question is, why would it, if there are 3 different things that they are different in name and type, why would they be mistarif? Why would they add up if each one of them does not have enough to asur the food, and they would be batel because their taste would not make a dent in the subtotal taste of the food? Why aren't they just nullified? And Chizkiah explains that no. Hacha begimel mine metika askinan. Says Chizkiah, this is 3 different types of names, right? It could be salt and pepper and I don't know, the chefs in the crowd, right? It will be 3 different, but all of them are the same type of taste. They're not contradicting taste. They're over here. All of them are sweeteners, right? There are 3 different types of mitika. They give the sweet, pleasant taste, so they are helping each other. They're the same taste, quote unquote. That's what Chizkiah says. Abaye jumps on this and says, oh, that's like me, because they're called 3 different things, but they all taste the same, or almost the same. So they help each other's taste, whereas their names are completely different, and the Braita is telling you that they are mistarfin, they are added up together to act as one unit to asur up the food. So what do you see from here? That if you have name and taste, which one do you follow? The taste. That's Abaye's proof. Beautiful, right? Says the Gemara. Chizkiah says, because even though that they're called different types, and you would think that they should not be considered one, but because because they are helping each other to sweeten the taste of the kedera, the pot, altogether, they are considered, they all have sweet taste, they will be considered as one. They will mistaref, they're combined together. So, Amrat, first white line, says the Abayim. Amrat b'shlomo b'tatamaza. If you say like me, says Abaye, that we go after the taste, then it's geschmack. It makes all the sense. Kulachatamahu, because they all are matok, they're all sweeteners, so to speak, they will be mistaref. Elai Amrat b'tashmaz. But if you say like Rava, my opponent, that he holds after name we go, these 3 are complete different names. They should not be mistaref together. Hayshma lechud, v'hayshma lechud. Each one of them has their own distinct and separate and different name. So this seems like a punch in the gut for Rava. This is a good raya. What does Rava answer? Genius. Rava says, no, you're missing something. There is a shita of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir holds from when it comes to isurim in the Torah, there is a pasuk that says explicitly that all the different types of isurim, they're combined together, regardless of their name or taste. If you put something that's asur as ingredients in the food, and you put another thing and another thing, all of them are asur, even though that each one is a minute amount, regardless, even if their tastes are completely different and their names are different, everything is still their mistarif. How do I know that? Says Rabbi Meir, it's a pasuk. And Rava says, haha, that's not a proof against me, because this is the case that you have 3 types of isurim mixed in the food, and it's a bright stam Mishnah is always Rabbi Meir. This is Shita of Rabbi Meir. Therefore, you have no proof against me. Go find another case that you see we go after the taste. You can't bring a raya from a case that the 3 components that are being combined are all asur to eat, because that is a completely different sugya that the Torah says, according to Rabbi Meir, that all the isurim are combined together, and therefore you have no proof against me. That's genius. Says the Gemara. Rava says, "Hi, mani Rabbi Meir." You have no proof against me because this is Rabbi Meir. That Tanya, we learned right. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishum Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Meir, "Minayin lekol isurim shebatorah shemistarafin zeim zem." How do I know that all the isurim of the Torah, if you mix them in a mixture, they are mistaref to a shiur that would prohibit the food together? They will help each other. They will be mistaref despite and regardless of their name being different, of their tastes being different, meaning it defies all the other rules of ta'arovot. Says the Gemara, shenemar, the pasuk says, lo tochal kol toeva, don't eat any abomination. Kol shetiavti lecha, anything that I have made prohibited for you, anything that I have declared asur, harehu bebal tochal. All of them are combined together.
Even less than 160.
Even less than 160 of each, they will be combined to be more than 160 or taste. When they are metabel, the machal, when they perfect the taste of the food together, like the case that we just had with the peppers, it will be asur. So now the Gemara says, how about every notch of the Gemara is more complicated. Now, we're going to have a little bit more complexity here. How about if I am pouring wine inside vinegar? Now, wine and vinegar, they taste differently. They also are called different. So it should be open and shot case that we should go after. Help me out. Benot and tam. So that should be pashut. Right? Because Sai, according to Rava or according to Abaye, both of them should tell you that we go after taste over here. Correct? Because they're called different things, vinegar and wine, and they taste differently. But here is the catch. Abaye has a very mechudash shita, very creative opinion, that when you pour wine inside, the vinegar has a very strong smell. Right? You put something in a container with vinegar, and then you take that thing out. Hashem Yirahem, right? You can not go in front of anybody with it because it penetrates the smell of. Even if you don't mix them, you just put them next to each other. It penetrates. A very strong smell vinegar has. So says Rava, if I am pouring wine inside vinegar, and the vessel of the vinegar, the cavity of the vessel is filled with this strong odor of vinegar, as soon as the wine enters the cavity of this kli, gets the smell of vinegar to it. Now I have something that is called wine. It tastes like wine, but it smells like vinegar. Right? Now, up until now, we know Abaye as Mr. Taste. Right? Everything is taste. How about if you have a contradiction between what the taste is and what the smell is? Does that make any difference? Says the Gemara. Pouring vinegar inside wine, everybody agrees that you go after taste, because that's not a problem. You're putting vinegar inside wine. Nothing changes the smell of anything, right? Until they get mixed. And then when they're mixed already, you go after noten tam. If it tastes, yes. If not, not. But says the Gemara, if you are pouring wine inside vinegar, which is this case that we just said, is going to be machloked Rava and Abaye. And the problem is because as soon as the wine enters the cavity of the kli of vinegar, it takes the smell of vinegar. Abaye amar b'mashu. Abaye says it's b'mashu. V'Rava amar benoten tam. Rava says it's benoten tam. Abaye says it's mashu. Why exactly would it be mashu? This is wine. That's vinegar. You know why mashu? Because Abaye amar b'mashu reche chala. If you have something that the smell of it is vinegar, v'tama chamra, despite the fact that the name of it and the taste of it is going to be wine, it's going to be chala. It's going to be called halachically when it comes to the isur veheter realm. It's going to be considered vinegar. That means Abaye holds, but the Gemara is going to say in just a moment, recha miltahi. Smell is very important.
Yeah.
We reckon with smell in a very serious way. And Rava says, recha lav miltahi. We don't care about smell. This actually becomes, in the halachot of Ta'arovot, a very relevant topic. You have your oven, and you are roasting meat inside the oven, and then you have some French fries on top, and there's no liquid necessarily, but there's smoke, right? The smoke that gives, some reach to it. There's no real particles of anything over there, but it's recha. Does that become now asur? Is that fleshik? Is that not fleshik? Recha miltahi, recha lav miltahi becomes a serious halakha in Shulchan Aruch. But for our purposes, it sounds a little less serious. Just pour the wine and in the cavity because the smell. But Abaye says asur. Because if your taste and name is wine, but your smell is vinegar, you're vinegar. V'havale min b'mino, and therefore it's considered vinegar inside vinegar. Min b'mino, v'chol min b'mino b'mashu. And it's going to be asur b'mashu. Rava amar b'noten tam. Rava says, no, it's going to be b'noten tam because reche chala v'tam chamra. If you have a contradiction between taste and smell, you go after the taste 7 days a week. Reche chala v'tam chamra, chamra. That's considered wine. Ve'havaleh min b'shenomina. Therefore, it's wine inside vinegar. It's min b'shenomino. Two different types mixture. Ve'chol min b'shenomino. Of course, is going to be benoten tam, and that's going to start a whole discussion of recha miltahi, recha lav miltahi. The next question of the Gemara is going to be if you have a professional wine schmecker, right? They used to have people who were professionals. They could tell you the quality of wine from just smelling it. So what they would do was they would go to the casks of wine, in the top they would poke a small, or they had a small hole, they would uncover that and put a thing inside, smell it, and tell you exactly how good the wine is, what's the alcohol level, how much lifespan he has left before it becomes vinegar, all of that. They could tell from the, can you hire a goyish wine schmecker, right? Or is that a problem? Because we know if they move it, it's a problem. If they, according to Shlach Kadosh, if they look at it, it's a problem. But how about if they smell it? Is that even a question, really? And that's going to be the next discussion in the Gemara, B'ezrat Hashem.
It sounds like the Bible.